And we're live, but
That's good.
It's actually not live. It's book cracking.
It's live, just you and me, a little live conference on
That's
our
right.
first book cracking since
That's
Blab decided to give us the finger. And
Blab is not our best friend right now.
not right now, but let's move
So,
on.
welcome to everybody to our first episode of book cracking. This month's book of the month was Control Alt Revolt by Nick Cole. Scott and I read this book this month, and now we're going to review it for you guys. We're going to share our thoughts on the characters, the setting, and the overall feel of the book. And I'd hope you guys will show your thoughts on the book if you've read it as well. We'll jump right into it. This book was written by Nick Cole. It's actually a prequel to his novel Soda Pop Soldier, and it kind of sets up the world for that.
Yeah.
So first
I haven't
off,
read, but I'm looking forward to reading that. You've already read that, correct?
I have read it. Actually, I have the copy right here.
There you go.
It's actually autographed by
Fantastic. It's awesome. And I read this, Josh. I thank Josh for suggesting this book because this was your pick this month. And so anyway, we'll get into the book review, but that's kind of how we came to it. You'd already read the first book, and this was the prequel. I know there's a lot of story about kind of the prequel and how it was published or how he handled it, but we're mostly going to focus on story and the book today. I think that's what we were talking about earlier, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I agree. Let's do it.
All right. Well, Scott, we'll ship it over to you for the first question or the first thoughts. Overall experience. What did you think of this book?
Okay. Now, this is going to be, this is having not done a lot of video book reviews. This is a little bit new, but I think it's a good place to start. Now, this book, I read a lot of books, I listen to a lot of audio books, and we decided to do this book review. And I was pushing through a lot of fiction and some nonfiction, and I was in a little bit of a slump. I mean, it was almost getting to be work to read as much as I needed to. And we decided to do this. I threw it up. I started reading it, immediately liked it. And then I realized I could get the audio sync with it. And so I can, on my Kindle app, I can either read it or listen to it. And I really like the narrator. Of course, now I can't remember her name. I'll have to look that up, put that in the show notes or something. But she was awesome. So the overall experience is I enjoyed it. It totally took me, my suspension of disbelief was fully engaged. I look forward to the story world. And my overall experience was a great experience. Now, trying to bring as much value as we can to people who want to read it. I don't know really how far to go in that, but because I don't want to just say, hey, this is great. But there's definitely parts in this book where instead of giving like a star ranking, but there were parts in this book where I was like, I wish I could write like that.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely puts it up in a high league. Definitely what I'd recommend for people to read, depending on your.
Yeah, and it's really good. I mean, when you read some books and you're like, this is a good book, but I think I could have done it better as a writer. Mm-hmm. But then when you read a book and you're like, man, I really wish I could have written something like that.
Yeah, it makes me feel bad about myself. Like, well, I'm such a loser, man. That was awesome. I want to write like this guy someday. So.
Just throw out everything you've ever written.
Yeah.
The narrator for the audiobook, her name is Mare. I'm going to butcher this name. Trevethan? Mare Trevethan.
Yeah, I had the same reaction when I looked it up. I did some internet research on her, trying to figure out if I found the right person. I think she's actually a actor, like a stage actor and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that voice actors who are actual actors often do really well with narrating. They're not just somebody who does lots of good voices, although that's important.
Right.
It's something about the way they phrase it. So that was a very good part of that experience. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I started reading this book out on Kindle. And then you mentioned that it was on audiobook, so I downloaded the audiobook as well and finished out listening to it on the audiobook. And I thought she did a very good job capturing the emotion of the characters, the voice of the author. I thought she captured both of those things very well. As reference to the characters of the book, there are several point of view characters in this book.
Mm-hmm.
99 Fishbine is the main character, who the book is formed around, and he is a game developer who's developed this. Help me with it, Scott. Pirate Island.
Island Pirates.
Island Pirates adventure. It's
A big sandbox adventure where you can go in and do all kinds of stuff and live an alternate reality, basically.
Right. Basically, the next level up for a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. And he has been brought to the development.
The designer compound, kind of like their headquarters.
That's what I was trying to say. He's brought to this compound, the WonderSoft headquarters,
Yep.
In preparation for their launching this game. And then you follow him through logging into this game and his adventures in that game world, but also in the regular world. That's what I really liked about this book is of the three. Well, there's four main viewpoint characters, but three of them happen in three different worlds, but they're still the same story. So like 99 Fishbine, he has his WonderSoft headquarters adventures with his Pirate Island adventures or Island Pirates adventures. And then you have Mara, who is a unique character in that she is not only paraplegic, but she's blind.
Right.
And through the use of technology can play video games and has sight in these video games. And she's a very dynamic character that way, I thought.
Yeah, she's got the razor dragon eyes, which kind of allow her to see and interact more fully. And I thought she was a well-done character. You got some more, or I'll take what you just said because it made me think of something.
Sure.
With the characters in the different worlds, I thought that Nick Cole did a pretty masterful job of tying those three different viewpoints and the different storylines together. I really like that. I kind of felt, even though I know that 99 Fishbine, or Fish, as he went by a lot, I think, was the main character because he was first and he always had the biggest. I felt more like Mara or whatever you say. She felt almost more like the main character to me. I mean, it's because she's the one I was rooting for the most.
I agree with you there. I agree with you there because she was kind of she's the underdog of the story.
Yeah. And she's trying to be a power player.
Right. Whereas the other two, where Fish is a developer of the game, the other point of view character is a character named Jason Dare, who is the captain of you should mention this, that the other setting is where Mara and Jason Dare interact with each other as a Star Trek based game.
Right. It's called Star Trek. What's it?
Empires, Starfleet Empires.
Right.
And Mara is a captain in a Romulan warbird, and Jason Dare is the captain of the USS Intrepid, which is basically the most famous ship in this game. And in this game, they have a Twitch feed that follows them live on missions, which is and it's very unique because he takes a lot of things that are just kind of coming into their own right now, like Twitch, where people can go and watch games and several different little aspects of pop culture right now, and puts them into these big corporations that make millions of dollars, like the NFL, but for video games, and people spend all this money and time watching them. So, but Jason is this, big name actor / role player in this game, and Mara is basically a nobody. And when she gets thrown into the mix of this game world, she kind of grows and becomes her own person. And you're right. I think she's more of the main character than she's more of a hero character, where she
definitely has the most standing in her way and is pretty does a lot. She's heroic. Everything she does is basically up to her. Which is one of the things we've talked about in other shows about your main character. It's got to be, they got to take the action. Somebody can't do it for them.
Right.
So it does that really well. So let me ask you this. with these, how did you feel? Did you feel like the whole, because there's a strong video game, cyber reality type cyberpunk thing going there. How did you feel about that? Did you feel like there was enough reason for that to happen? Because I felt like they did a pretty good job. But I'd be curious to see what you think.
Yeah, I thought that it all melded well, to bring the story together, to bring all the three different places together. And you needed that, the make is what it's called in the book.
Mhm.
You needed that to bring all that together. The only thing that kind of threw me off a little bit, and it's not even a negative on the story. It's just you look at it, like stepping back and saying, if Silas, who is a artificial intelligence, is taking over the world and basically shuts down everything, how is the game world still working? And that was
Right.
my only, that was my, and they kind of explained it in the end, with the core and all that stuff.
Right.
But that was my major, how is it still happening with everything else that's happening going on in the real world?
Yeah.
Um,
And that's
but
kind of what I was getting at is like, because they, I've read other types of, I guess the one that kind of reminds me of Snow Crash. I don't know if you ever read that, but that's a lot. It's a book that's written in the 90s actually, and it involves a world in cyberspace. And and whenever I read a story like this, I'm like, it's a little bit contrived that they have to do stuff in the game world or else it has real world consequences.
right.
And I think they did a pretty good job in Control Alt Delete. I think Nick Cole did a good job with that.
Well, and I think the different aspects of the game, like in the Starfleet Empire's version of the game, what's going on there, with, I don't want to give it away, but with the end game of that storyline ties in well with what's going on in the real world, and it kind of, okay, it has to happen like that, and it makes sense
Right.
that it makes sense after you get there, but while you're getting there, you're thinking, I really don't understand how it's working, even though I like reading it because it's fun. I'm a huge Star Trek nerd. I grew up watching The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager. So when they have these Romulan warships decloaking and photon torpedoes and these characters that have taken on likenesses that are pulled from several iconic Star Trek characters, like there's an engineer in this game called Scarpa.
Yeah, like Scarpa.
That's his gamer name, but he pulls a lot of things from the Scotty character from the original series, and it's funny that he takes those little, it's not all Scotty, but he takes these tidbits and throws them in
There's
there.
one part in there where Jason Dare, he's playing this really famous Starfleet captain, and there's a part where he said he meant to study the earlier captains, the classics, but he didn't have time. So he
Yeah,
kind of knew who they were a little bit, like he referred to doing a Shatner, but he wasn't quite sure why they said that. And
yeah.
it's so funny. It's like not quite sophisticated or he's not well read or well viewed enough, or whatever you would call it. It's like I really should have went back and watched the original ones.
He's definitely not a nerd's nerd, which is funny that
Right.
he's playing a game. What I thought was
Yeah.
great about it is that Nick threw in a lot of under the table jokes and lines that meant that were in the story for the sake of the story, but they also he took them from the series. He took them from different Star Trek things. So they're lines that make sense in the narrative, but they're also stolen from like Star Trek the episodes or Star Trek the movies or something.
From the culture you grew up in, basically.
Yeah. So, but if you didn't know, then it wouldn't be something that you think about. But knowing that you've watched the series and you know the line, it's like he was the most human is the one that sticks out in my mind. And then one of the characters says it to another character, and I'm like, that's from the Wrath of Khan. Haha, I get it.
That brings me in something I just caught on here a minute ago. You're talking about the Romulan warbirds decloaking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that made me think of a big concept in this without giving too much detail. I don't like spoilers. I wouldn't watch a review that had a bunch of spoilers in it. But anyway, this shouldn't be. But there's a bunch of things in this called mini games.
Right.
And basically, so if you're like playing, you're in this really advanced online world, and you come to a point where you can't get, like, your shields are going down, then one of the characters has an option to play a mini game, which will unlock some other things. But when I was reading it, it struck me as the mini games were almost like subplots.
Yep.
And we've talked before about subplots,
Yep.
and so I just thought that was interesting. I don't really have a lot to say about that, but I thought the correlation was that those were pretty useful in some ways.
Well, and it just throws it throws another level into the narrative, and those people that play games that understand what a mini game is, you can see them having to do that to fix a problem that they're having in the overall game, and I like that a lot.
I thought I was going to hate the mini games. I thought this is going to be tedious. It's going to be action for the sake of action. Oh my god!
Yeah.
And Scarpa, I guess he's a pretty good side character. He does that first deal where he's working in the what is it, a bakery or something?
The bakery, yeah.
And then he's got to go do this mini game and unlock this stuff, and he's got to get up and make the bread, whatever. So there's a lot of good main characters in this, but I liked some of the side characters. Like I liked Scarpa. I liked Jason. There's almost a side character, but he's kind of like his role goes back and forth,
right,
on what's going on. So, but then and Fanta.
See, I did not see Fanta coming at all, and I guess I should have if I'd been paying attention to it. But I liked the twist there with Fanta.
I like Fanta. It had some good visuals in there.
or yeah.
I thought, well, that's,
what's interesting to me is and I don't want to go into it too much on the book review, just because it's been kind of beaten to death on every other show. But when you talk about Silas and the consensus of AIs,
right. Consensus, rational thinking, and war mind, and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's funny to me that, well, it's not funny. It's interesting that they have an AI, which is cool in and of itself, but then you have several AIs that do several different things. And it was interesting to see that basically it was an AI, well, he says consensus, but a group of AIs that come together that are specifically made to think of different aspects of
right.
thought and consciousness.
They come to the consensus with different skill sets or backgrounds, almost like people.
Right.
But Silas, if I remember, he was the first to become self-aware.
Exactly.
And then he has these ones that are also there. My favorite is rational thinking, because I didn't think rational thinking's got a lot to live up to. I mean, if you were a computer child and your name was rational thinking, you're like, I'm never going to be able to live up to this.
Yeah,
that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
So, where are we going next on this?
I think overall, I really, really enjoyed the story. You have, in one cool cyberpunk adventure story, you have a Star Trek spaceship battle game. You have a really cool kind of island adventure pirate exploration game. You've got robots attacking humans in real life. It's all kind of wrapped together in one, and it's a very fun read, a very quick read. If I were to label it in a category, definitely cyberpunk, definitely adventure. But it's also, if you read the subtext of his story and you listen to some of what his characters say, not all, because it's not a preachy book, but you can definitely glean a cautionary tale from the book itself on the narrative of what we're going through today and some of our domestic and foreign politics and different things, which I think you'll get in any book, really.
A lot of I think that a lot of the issues people have, I think they're overreacting to some of the stuff. I thought that a lot of this kind of social commentary, because a little bit of your author always going to show through, but it's, it was his humor. I really liked his humor, and
Oh yeah.
and I wouldn't even have realized that. You know what? I bet you somebody could be offended by that, but I didn't take it that way. Of course, I'm pretty hard to offend.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of the stuff that I thought was really funny, it was funny because it was ironic, because he'd say, "Oh, we can't do this because of such and such," and I'm like, that is hilarious because it's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
A very well written book. I can't wait to read. I want to say that for those of you who don't know, this book was originally said to be published by HarperCollins, but was not, for reasons we won't get into on this show, but we may get into tomorrow on our live show with Nick Cole tomorrow,
which will be awesome. I'm looking forward to that.
Which will be fantastic. His first book, Soda Pop Soldier, well, it wasn't his first book, but the first book in this universe was published by HarperCollins. This book, Control Alt Revolt, was not. So Nick indie published it, and it reached #1 in cyberpunk. I don't know if it's still #1 in cyberpunk right now, but he has several other books that he's written. Some of them are zombie apocalypse. One I think is I don't think it's zombie apocalypse. I think it's just apocalypse. I haven't read that one yet. The Old Man in the Wasteland.
I just bought one that popped up on Facebook or something. It had a great cover, and I read the blurb, but of course now I can't find it.
It's probably The Old Man in the Wasteland, because that book is that's the book that actually got him picked up by publishers. He indie published it. If I understand it correctly, and I hope I don't mess it up, but if I understand it correctly, he wrote The Old Man in the Wasteland, and then publishers picked him up based on that book, and there's a trilogy in that book too. So
the pawn in the portal, it looks like.
Oh yeah. That's
looks like a good yarn.
I think that was a novella he just released. But I don't know what universe that's in.
Cool.
So, any last thoughts?
My last thoughts, I guess, to keep it concise, is that I would have no problems recommending this for somebody to read. It's a great, entertaining read, fun, enjoyable. I'm glad I read it. I don't really feel like giving it a star rating in this particular venue. I'll do that maybe if I write up a written one.
Yeah, I agree.
I really liked it. I think he did a great job. There's parts of it that I thought were extremely entertaining.
Yeah, star ratings are I think they're overinflated anyway.
It would be high.
Yeah. And really I don't know that we have a way to do a completely logical star rating on this show, so it wouldn't be really feasible to do it. I will say that I really enjoyed the book. It was easily in the top 10 that I've read this year so far of enjoyable and fun books to read. And that puts it up there with Brandon Sanderson. And
I probably liked it more than Brandon Sanderson, what I've read so far.
Wow. Interesting.
But and one last thing, what was the narrator's name? Mara
Trevathan.
I hope she keeps reading books because she did a great job. So
did a phenomenal job.
You gonna wrap it up?
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for coming and watching our first book cracking. This has been Book Cracking with Josh and Scott. We've been talking about Control Alt Revolt by Nick Cole. Don't miss our interview with the author. If you're watching this live, it will be tomorrow at 2 p.m. Tomorrow being the 29th of April, 2016. If you're watching this on the feed, be sure to check out our interview with Nick Cole. It's going to be great fun. I think you'll learn a lot and have a good time.
Can't wait.
Until next time, I am Josh.
I'm Scott.
And we are Keystroke Medium, and we will see you guys later. Take it easy.
Be safe.